How's it going, guys? Been a while. The mic has been off. They did a software update and hasn't really been working, so I finally got it fixed. So let's start off with looking at a few things here. I think we should start with Bitcoin on the weekly. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. So let's begin with a few simple things here. Okay, so first off, I just want to mention that the best way, really, in my opinion, to view price and view data in the simplest form is to understand the trend. There's several aspects to this, but after researching a lot the past year about indicators, trends, and whatever, I've been working on a lot of stuff. What I found is that the MACD on higher time frame is one of the most, and I'm not even joking, the most accurate indicator out there. So the bar colors on my chart are basically just based on crossovers on the MACD. Okay, so when the bar color is green, it's just a MACD cross. If the bar color is red, this is a bearish MACD. Okay, and this is that simple. So the MACD is below here as well, and I can just overlay it just so you get a feeling here, so you can see how simple and accurate this is. So you can see here how this place is when you had the bearish crossover, you're starting to get these bearish candles. This is where you had a bullish crossover. This was not a crossover, even though the bars got red, but it didn't really cross. This is a cross, indecision place, sideways, bullish cross, right? And you have all of these places, even at the top here, you can see how accurate it is, okay? Because it's a slow and a fast moving EMA, okay? And they complement each other extremely well. So if you look here now, what I want to show you is that we had a large down trend in the MACD. So you can see how it's a large downtrend, sort of a bearish trend, but we didn't really have a large sell-off, right? Instead of having a bearish move lower, it actually became sort of a sideways consolidation, okay? And I sort of expect or the idea now, in my opinion, is that this is a reversal, and very soon we're going to start seeing a bullish crossover coming in the beginning of October, most likely, as we're breaking out, right? So when price is breaking out, this will cross over. Since it's a weekly crossover, usually it's extremely bullish, okay? And that's sort of the most simplest way to really view this kind of price action. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so also the other part I want to show you, but I don't have this indicator on because I only have the sell side on, the extreme buy side. But you can see how the premium here was a sell signal, and now again the premium is more or less a buy signal, or at least it's negative, meaning that there is not any extreme positioning. There's not any extreme leverage or basically what it's showing is not there is not any extreme leverage in the system. And on the other hand, I would rather argue that we might actually have an extreme shorting going on in the system instead of longs. I don't think there is not that too much longs. I think the way I view this is that if we were supposed to go lower, this was the time, right? And since we actually failed to drive lower within this weekly candle, that's also when I reversed my bias, right? Because the bias came within this candle close. That's when the bias was formed, because we had an engulfing to the other side, which was bullish. Okay, and it overlapped as well with seasonality. Now, the other part that I have to mention as well, coming into this discussion as well, is to understand the seasonality. Again, I have done so many posts about it. I just want to mention it briefly. And you can see this from last year. This was sort of the September, how we created the September cycle low, and then we had the rally. I want to argue as well that even though it was during a bear market, we also had that the year before, right? So even though we had a sell-off in November, but you know, this was mostly due to the FTX sell-off and the equities market didn't really nuke. So I still think, even though we had this extremely bearish candle, the overall formation here was actually a bottom formation moving higher. Okay, and you can do this all the way back, right? So you can do that in 2020 as well. So this was the October. You can see that you had a contraction over the summer month, and then you had a larger rally as well. Let's see if this correspond. It's not the same exactly. It's sort of a beginning of a bear market. It's a different structure, but regardless, coming into October, November, you still had sort of that rally in towards December, even though it was not sustained because it was overall part of a corrective move in this bear market sort of sequence in terms of rate hikes, right? So it's a different scenario. Now, the other part which is important is that we are not focusing solely on only seasonality, right? We're not focusing only on MACDs. The idea here becomes that we're using a combination of this, and we're building a story, right? So that's sort of the important part, because on Twitter it is extremely difficult within a tweet or two, to portray this whole story. That's why it's easier with videos, but videos, people really don't care to listen. They only get a few people taking their time really to digest this kind of information. But the idea remains that you're doing a combination, right, of price action, indicators, seasonal trends, central bank policies, okay, and you're building sort of a narrative that you want to trade upon, right? So all of these are equally important, and it's the combination of these ideas that gives you confidence and a direction to trade, because a resistance is pointless without having these combinations used to your advantage, right? Because there will always be resistance and there will always be support, but sometimes you will always keep breaking resistance to either direction, and that's why macro analysts talk about stocks tailwinds, right? So tailwinds is basically that when you're having governments or whoever market makers or actors supporting the economy or the stock, that's a positive tailwind. Okay, and the other part also, people want to know exact levels. They want to know exact price sections, when to sell, when to buy. That's not really how it works, right? We all like to have it that simple, but I think we can even make it more simple, right? Because we're having all this data and all this information, we can just use it and then use common sense as well. So a great example here is this premium and the extreme RSI. So the extreme RSI, I think, is above 85 on a weekly. That's tend to give extremely good sell signals, right? And sell signals doesn't really mean shorting, right? Sell signals more or less means profit taking, okay, which is two different things, or hedging. And then, of course, you can choose to short if you want, right? And will be more based on a lower time frame, because sell-offs are usually extreme aggressive and it happens very fast within a contraction phase, while uptrends and price moves moving upwards usually comes after phases of a larger contraction in terms of reaccumulation phases, and we often use a lot of more times, and you will get bars more or less like large and then small and then large, right? And then maybe you get one dip and then you get small bars and large, okay? Now, this is the other part. So I'm not going to go in too much in depth about this, but you want to use the premium here, as I said, and then also use a MACD cross is often very good on high time frames, okay? I think those are the most bets. And then seasonality, which time of the year usually you get something between February and May is usually sort of the worst months in terms of looking for a top, right? So you want to be looking for longs in the time period we are trading at now, right? And then look for selling during those times, right? And it's never ever perfect, because if it was perfect, the market would have been rigged, right? Somebody would sit with all this information, always knowing what is correct. That's not how it works, right? We are just all participants of the market, trying to understand and do the best we can to make some money. Okay, so let's go further and look at some other parts as well. I think we can zoom in slightly and start discussing a few things. But yeah, before I forget, I keep on saying this, and I just want to expand on this topic a bit first, and that is how we trend on week-to-week basis. Okay, so after researching a lot, I'm trying to understand this how markets really trend, and the best way for me to view it is that the market more or less is actually based on the weekly, not the daily. I always thought that the daily was very strong, but the daily is for me starting to get more sort of a lower time frame place, because it doesn't matter how low time frame you actually go, it still is sort of the weekly and daily that dictates the direction on the way price moves. So you have three aspects, and you have early in the week, midweek, and end of the week, right? All of these can be sort of reversal points that will depend on price data, where you are within the market, the candles, whatever. Okay, so there's nothing too accurate with that, but you can wait for something, and especially in terms of how price moves. Now, the last part I want to explain to you here is that if you look very closely, right, on these kind of uptrends and these downtrends, usually you will see, let's start with the downtrend, right? So down candle, okay? The next weekly, can look at this, right? The next weekly, we did a slight, very small retrace, and then we trended lower. The next weekly, we went into that, and then we started trading lower, right? So the next, can you see that each weekly open more or less holds, right? We do a small rebalance, and then it continues, okay? This is where you're having a sort of a consolidation where price stalls, right? So you're having downtrend like this, and then you have a price pause where you're seeing a few candles within the same region, which is just a consolidation, and then it actually continues, right? Then lower, price pause, lower, and then you're having a larger consolidation, okay? So and then the trend continues, right, from this weekly, lower, 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 and I'm talking about the open, right? So if you view the price in these very simple terms, a lot of the times you will see price. What it does is that on a weekly basis, it trends weak open to close. Then it does a very small rebalance, and then continues higher to next week. Small rebalance, higher. Small rebalance, higher. Okay, until it meets a sort of a consolidation. Okay, and that consolidation is small retrace, small retrace, small retrace, small retrace. Okay, and usually within the same weekly candle, and then it continues. Right, small retrace continues, small retrace continues. Then it does small body candle, small body candle, small body candle, small body candle, continues. Okay, and if you look at this, all of this weekly, more or less, often leaves a wick and rebalances the previous weekly candle. Okay, and that's why we say price just trends on week-to-week basis, right? So small body candles are just sideways patterns on a weekly, right? So if you go into a lower time frame, when price pauses, it just looks something like this, right, on a lower time frame, right? And then it moves higher, and then it continues the trend moving upwards from higher. Okay, but on a weekly basis, it just looks like this, small retrace like that. Okay, and this small consolidation on a lower time frame looks something like this, and you will see a lot of arrows on Twitter. Okay, and if so, you can basically just use sort of the weekly. So if you use now what we are seeing now, right? So that was my point of flipping the bias, right? One of the main drivers for that was when you look at this candle, okay, I was expecting when this opened, we should continue lower down towards the 40-50K mark. But instead, right, instead of continuing lower, we had an engulfing part, right? So it went higher and engulfed through that and through that high, okay? So it was a very bullish candle. So it's not on itself that one bullish candle was that important, but it also had the combination, as I said, with mid-September and the rate cuts, right? So you're having the tailwind from the central banks pushing price, and then you had the confirmation of the tailwind in price action, right? So the the narrative is got reflected by the price action, the candlestick pattern, right? And that's the time when you just switch bias on the spot. Okay. So that's very example, very good example. So the way we view it now, right? So you can see that once we opened the next candle, right? That's why we aggressively longed, and then you can see upwards into resistance, and now we're reclaiming this resistance. We're moving above 65,000, right? And what is price is doing is that we're just simply trending, as I said, on a week-to-week basis, right? So when people are talking about, okay, so we should do a pullback towards 60K, whatnot. There are times when this is relevant. There are times when this is less relevant, right? Of course, we can see a pullback. If we do get a pullback, that will be extremely bullish. But what price is doing now is trying really to start a new trend. So, if you understand the point there, right? So we have a consolidation, and we are now finally breaking out, right? So if you look at this, right? So if this is a consolidation, once you have this breakout, we don't want price to come back to this, right? That's bearish, right? Price doesn't really do that. When price breaks out, what it does is starts trending, right? It creates a trend. That's why the meme comes from no pullback, right? So if you're bearish, don't wait for a pullback, just market long. But people tend to do it way too late in the cycle, right? And they get wrecked from it. So instead of looking for pullbacks, what often occurs are flash crashes, right? Or smaller flash crashes on a weekly, right? So you can see, let me just drive a very good example of this. This is one good example, simple example. This also, but this is more of a consolidation instead of a flash crash. But let's pretend this is a few bars only, okay? I think these are good examples, even though we didn't sustain the momentum. This is also a good example. And you will find them a lot. What those says, right, or what these flash crashes are usually just open interest and overly leveraged traders really trying to get, that 100x and get the free ride. The system needs to flush it because the order book gets skewed, or that's at least my opinion on it. And then you see price moving like this, okay? And instead of moving, you see a extremely aggressive move like this, and it looks extremely bearish, right? So at that point, not on weekly, but maybe on daily, maybe even on 8-hour, 4-hour, it looks extremely bad, right? So then people starting to draw those head and shoulders. And what price does, it does a Dalai Lama, and it just continues like this. Okay, but price was never meant to sell off in the first place, right? Because a sell-off usually takes much more time, and it takes at least minimum one engulfing weekly candle to create a new downtrend. So what it does is you're getting these Dalai Lamas, and price continues, and it squeezes the market higher. Okay, and it uses the money of the over-leveraged traders as fuel, in addition to what is already in the market, right? So that's a good strategy, and that is when you want to buy, right? So instead of waiting for pullbacks, that's what's my point with this rant now, this past minutes, is that instead of waiting for a large pullback, what you should be waiting for is these flash crashes, and then you trying to buy into the wick, right? So when does the wick occur? It occurs usually into previous weekly candles, right? So you're having this is a good level, and this is a good level. Both are equally good, right? So you're waiting. Flash crashes usually last most of the time a few hours, maybe even less. You don't need to buy the exact low, but if it looks very good and the flash crash is extreme, right? So if you're having, I can't remember now, but you can see it on Velo, how many or how large open interest got wrecked, right? So if the open interest that got wrecked is one of the large on the very larger side, that usually symbolizes a bottom, right? And the reason behind that is because you want to use the data, right? So if let's say, just see if 2 billion in open interest got wiped in one day, and if that is the extreme norm, then that's most likely the bottom, right? But if it's just 500,000 or whatever, or maybe just 1 billion, maybe you can wait more and see if you're going to get, another crash. But you get the point of this, okay? So this is and all of this discussion now we had for all this time and minutes is all based on the weekly, right? Because this is where you want to trade it. So if you go here and take a look at some of these simple coins, I think I just want to use, let's use FTM is good, FET is good to use these as examples of the weekly trend, right? So you can see how you had this potential dip, and then you're having the trend. When it starts, it just moves, right? It moves higher, and especially you will see this one, right? There is zero pullbacks. It's just week on week on week on week on week, and then this is a flash crash, right? This is the perfect flash crash, as I talked about. When you're having that one, that's when you're trying to buy, and you see that. So you can see the flash crash. That's actually the largest candle, and it also symbolizes nearly close to the top. And usually you will see that in the beginning of trends, often it is smaller body, right? So smaller bodies, and then it gets larger. And when you're getting to these extreme bodies, that's usually the top. But you never know, how high. Of course, it can go higher. So you never know how high. So it's more about profit taking than, of course, looking to take the shorts. Now on FTM as well, this is a good example. And then we can use this as well. So you can see how when the trend occurred, you see on week to week, on week to week, on week to week, each week opens and closes higher. So on proximity, you can say that, in the nearest part of each week, that's when we start trending. And once you get that dip, usually it's a bit larger most of the time, unless it's a flash crash, is usually a larger pullback. And larger pullback, it's all relative. But if you just use an example, you get a channel like this most of the time, right? And then you get a sell-off, pullback, something like this. And then once you get that reclaim, right, then it's game over, and you start continuing. That's a bull flag, and it goes higher. But the point of that is that once you get, this is a good example of it, right? Once it reverses, it keeps trending, right? So that the point is that we always trend on week to week basis, right? So the distinction here is to understand that we trend on week to week to week to week higher. Once you get the sell-off, and it's confirmed on a weekly, is usually 1 week, 2-3 weeks of downtrend, okay? And once that is reversed, right, then it's up only again, right? You're not looking on larger weekly pullbacks all the time, right? Price wants to trend. And to use this, you can use the MACD. Okay, that's the point of this as well. You can use the MACD. You can see how we closed, sorry, on the bottom aspect here, you can see how we reversed the MACD here at the bottom, right? So if you look, this is the bottom. This is when we had the reversal in the MACD, and now it's just in a MACD trend. And you can see how beautiful this trend is, right? You can see it. So even though this here did turn green, but if you look at the MACD below, you can see that it's not correct, right? It's just the indicator showing wrong signal because it's a slight cross. It's not really a cross, right? It's not really a cross. A cross looks like this, especially when it's the bottom, and then you're having the boiling bands as well, confirming at the bottom, right? So it was a very good level. So let's go back to Bitcoin here, right? So let's go to a lower time frame. So if you understand this now, right, on a weekly, I don't really care about the lower time frame, right? Because I understand that it's all based on week to week candles. So now we're having, this is 1 week, okay? And let's just press this one. It's the previous week. Okay, now we got very two simple levels that we can watch. If you go into the daily, you can see that the lower part here, the lowest part is 58 to 60. Okay, it's a decent level, but it will be a very deep pullback. Okay, so I kind of not expect that. What I would expect, okay, the way I view price is that we should now continue maybe slightly lower and get an open interest ramp, okay, something like this, and then once we open next week, you get that flush in towards a retest of the previous weekly candle, okay, which means that the trend is still sustained on all levels, and then it continues. Okay, something like this. We don't need to go up there. I'm just saying that for me, the time is much more important than the level, right? The level just shows, okay, but the other part as well. Remember the open there at the weekly that I showed. When we go into a daily, look at this. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 candles. It's a consolidation, isn't it? Right? So on a weekly, right? Just to go back, just want to point this out. So important. On a weekly, is just a candle, right? It's just a wick to the up, a wick to the downside, a very small one. But on a daily, it's actually a consolidation at previous highs. If you go into a 4-hour chart, look at this. What is this? Is what they call vertical accumulation, right? Vertical accumulation. You know, it's all just BS, right? It's all BS. It's all about the weekly, right? Because you had all the information. If you just bid, you know, the weekly or the weekly open level, you know, it's the same. You don't need to go to the 4-hour chart and talk about order blocks at the low, and we have to raid the low, right? Equal lows doesn't matter. Price just trends on a weekly. We tend to overcomplicate stuff way too much. All right, so very simple, right? The same here. You can see, you know, it's just wicks in terms of liquidity, right? So it's just TWAPs, traders chasing price, order book skewed to one side, presses price up, right? On the weekly here is a reversal, or at least price is really trying to reverse the trend. Okay, so that's sort of the macro aspect. Now, the other part that I want to talk about here very quickly is the PA reversal with momentum and boiling bands and RSI. You can see at the bottom of the chart. And this is the 8-hour, how you're getting these beautiful signals, right? These buy signals. It just shows in terms of momentum. And you need these just to give you a pinpoint on where we are within certain trends, etc. Right? So you can see here we're having 3. This is like extremely good buy signal, right? Because you're having the boiling bands at the extreme. You're having a price action candle reversal, and then you're having the MACD reversal as well. Okay, so these are good pinpoints, right? So this is when once we had this day, right, and then you had that candle pump that I showed you right there. This is when the price area when I flipped bullish, right? Because if we were bearish on this concept, this momentum should have shifted downwards, but instead it reversed to the upside. So let's do a very quick review on the weekly, some of these charts, okay? And I'm going to be very quick on this, okay? I'm not going to use a lot of time, right? So just pause the video, take the sentences, right? Not serious, but you get the point. So Tau chart looks good, expanded way too much. Don't know the reason behind this. I think, you know, if you get a flash into these levels and we create a good consolidation for further upside, that's a good idea. Render entered this yesterday. I think this is gonna send, right? Of course we cannot. I think most of these charts, you can use a tight and then chase price, but if you want to be more smart in terms, you know, and maybe use slightly larger risk just due to the distance here, I think a stop below these lows are safe. I think this is gonna move upwards. We're sitting at resistance. This looks to me as a reaccumulation, okay, and we're gonna start expanding soon. Okay, that's the idea. Fed is looking much better. I think it was leading, but it stalled, so I'm not really certain here. This is a 3-day. Let's see the week, right? So if you do get, you know, if we are moving back to 1.3, we're engulfing this weekly. So I don't want to say that we should get a dip that deep, right? Because that would be sort of bearish. But I think any sell-off is a very good buy now. And to me, it looks like $3 is next. And on week-to-week basis, as I mentioned, I think it's going to be a very good long soon. GLM, I also took this. Dinocoin, probably going to be a very slow mover. But I think the chart is doing a reaccumulation phase. Also boiling balance been contracting. Looks like a strong low has been formed, expecting further upside. Um, AVAX, really good. Finally breaking out, in my opinion. This is sort of the breakout. Okay, we're starting to move away. This trend reversal at the bottom. On a 3-day, we're having a few buy signals. The weekly is looking as a shift here in MACD is starting to cross on a weekly. It looks very good, in my opinion, for more upside, expecting this to move towards 40. I think 50 is the good target, but 40 is decent as well. Rose looking good. Solana is a slow mover at the moment, but eventually I think it's going to break pretty hard to the upside once something happens. I don't know, but I'm holding some spot on this. I don't know how high it can go. I think eventually in this overall bull market, expecting 4 to 800. Looking good, just extremely slow mover. Has been it for a while. Expecting further upside, but still, I think it's better to long something else near. I think it looks extremely well. Okay, there's nothing bad about it. Everything looks good. I think it's difficult to get in at the moment because the structure doesn't scream for any particular thing. That's when we go back to week basis, right? So maybe a small pullback on the weekly. Okay, so if you rebalance something in the weekly, right? So I rebalance from the $6 mark towards the $4 or the $5 mark. Gonna probably be a good buy. BNB gonna repower tea. I'm not sure. Sui, not my cup of tea. AP, it's looking good, right? But still, I don't like it too much. Cosmos, cursed coin, gonna delete it. Algo, is something I spot, I hold in case of a larger pump, but nothing more than that. FTM, I think this is going to be one of the stronger narratives, in my opinion, as you're going into Sonic. I'm waiting on some kind of a dip to take that trade. Haven't gotten that yet, but again, week to week, let's see. I think anything between 5 and current level is going to be extremely good buy. Say broke out, as we discussed. You can see that on a 3-day chart. So rebalance some of the last candle and then continue the trend. I think towards $1 is highly likely. All right, so this is the trend that we sort of moved away from. I think this looks like a decent breakout. Engine coin looking good. I don't know more about it than it has been chilling. If you look at the MACD here, is showing a lot of divergence on the MACD, and then we're having a final cross. This cross looks sustained, and the alligator gap is widening. So I would expect this to be the start of a trend, but we will see. I feel pretty certain. For me, this looks more like divergence, right? So each low that's getting created is more of a divergence of a momentum to finally drive higher, rather than a consolidation, especially lining up with seasonality and whatever. OP, even though this is based on Ethereum, if I'm not mistaken, it looks good. It looks too good, right? So on a 3-day, look at this massive buy signal. This is insanely good buy signals. You're having this fractal of price pattern. It's like, why fade it? Take a position. My take on it, okay? Rune also had this breakout. I took some profit, eventually going to drive higher. But it's a decent breakout. Remember that Rune, most of the time, if you look closely, it does tight consolidations and then large candles, right? So tight consolidations, then large candles. That's how I view it. So this one, all of these consolidations, this one as well. And all of these, most of the time leads to these larger expansions, right? So large there. All of these, at least in my opinion, they lead to these large expansions, okay? Large candles. And this is sort of what we already saw. I think it looks pretty decent. When it comes to meme coins, WIF broke out, finally holding that as well. I think this is also going to go higher, moving into some kind of a resistance, very similar to Pepe. You can see how this memes, most of these memes are moving exactly right, the same. So the same goes for WIF, the same goes for Dogecoin. They're all moving the same way, right? So the market is sort of moving together. I think the difficult part is just to find them right before the breakout and have sort of as tight stop loss as possible without it being a risk to taking unnecessary losses, right? So the idea is right there. As you don't want to have unnecessary losses of ours just because having a too tight stop, wanting to make too much money. So it becomes larger with a larger portfolio, because then a lot of money doesn't need to grow too much to make money, right? Instead of if you're having a very small amount of portfolio, it feels dreading to take like just to make a few $100 or whatever. Instead, when you're having a large account, when you can make several 100,000 much more faster, and then it feels extremely different, right? So if you can just enter on spot, if you have enough money, you take a spot position like this, and then price moves well 20%, and you can make and you can make 50,000. That's good money, right? But if you do that on a very small account, and then you just make what, $100, it's not life-changing money. And that's sort of the difficult aspect in trading, that you actually need to make little by little and have a few believers to make any real amount of money. Okay, so that's it about Bitcoin and altcoins. We're having here, let's just do a very quick, it looks like S&P 500 will take a price pause overall. Let's go further here. This one, sorry. We'll do a price pause soon, but let's just show here. So let's go to the weekly. So even though lower time frame kind of look bearish, for me this looks like a new trend. Okay, so let's just explain this here. Is for me a reversal in price, the same as this, the same as this one. Okay, the same as these ones. Okay, so for me this is a reversal in price. We're gonna trend higher. So you can see S&P has already broken out, right? So we will just consolidate, in my opinion, around all-time highs before trending higher. That's sort of the view of price. Now tech is a bit behind at the moment, which also is crypto assets as well. Is slight on the low side, and I think they will catch up sooner rather than later. And it will go fast. Once you go slow. It's like a snowball. That's how you have to view this, right? So the mid of September is the beginning of the snowball, and then you roll it, right? And as time goes by in towards the Christmas and in towards May, you're getting into that aspect when the snowball is getting big and it goes fast, right? It goes fast, and that's when you get these larger candles. If you use near, you can see that the same goes here. And then you suddenly get these larger candles, and it's all over, right? That's the idea, when you get that euphoric, because you on a week-to-week basis you get those insane returns, and then it's suddenly over. But you don't know how can you time it? You can't really time it. You only have time to use for that, like May, March, April, starting to look for signs of potentially topping, while still trading to the upside, of course. But you're looking for all these signs on indicators and whatever in for central banks and the macro, etc. As the tailwind might start to shift. And keep in mind there the MACD again. You can see that we're starting to get a crossover pretty soon for a lot of these altcoins. Okay, which is a bullish sign, because they haven't really crossed yet. Okay, so we're breaking out with not even them crossing yet. So, if this is anything, it should just be the beginning of a larger move. Okay, long video. It's a long time since I made a video, so I need to do sort of a larger update. Hope you got something out of it. Let's talk later, guys. Peace out.